Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Kaylee Batesman, the content director at She Can Code, and today we are discussing how to thrive in a male-dominated industry. Now, navigating your own path isn't always easy, so we're going to dive into strategies for success. We're going to cover empowerment, resilience, and breaking down barriers. I'm joined by the wonderful Sophie Schmidt, who is a trailblazing sales manager in the tech industry, and today she's going to share her own career journey and insights on thriving in a male dominated field. Welcome, Sophie. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first ever podcast, so I'm super excited to be here and yeah, really looking forward to diving into this never-ending topic.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that you're spending your first podcast with us. So thank you so much for joining us for that. And we're going to kick off today, if we can, with a little bit of background about yourself, please.
Of course. So I have been in the tech industry and in sales actually for 8 years now. I started, 8 years and 2 months ago, at a company called Bloomberg, which is more in the kind of financial technology space, and kind of straight out of uni went into it, started at the help desk back in the day, and have been working my way up the corporate ladder, slow but steadily. So yeah, just all been in the tech industry my entire career.
And how did you fall into the tech industry, or did you know you wanted to go into tech, for instance, but kind of fell into sales? What on earth happened there? What did you want to be when you were younger?
So I wanted to be a dancer, so I've definitely gone off path from then. But no, I would say I fell into tech at the very beginning. I kind of 6 months before graduation was looking around on my entire friend circle, and somehow all of them had secretly found jobs. And so I found myself scraping the internet for companies that were still accepting offers and, still having kind of like rolling recruitment processes going on. And so it ended up being between Bloomberg, which of course is a huge technology company, but also a huge company in the space of news and journalism, or the tobacco industry. And I'm very happy that I chose tech rather than tobacco, because I think, yeah, my career would have been slightly different if I had gone into the tobacco industry.
Yes, that's a tad. It's always interesting because so many ladies on here say they fell into tech, and like yourselves, they stay. So it's always interesting. So I didn't mean to go into tech, but you stuck around, and there was nothing about the industry where you thought, you know what, that was a bad move. Maybe I should go elsewhere. We would just love to hear that more ladies know that it's a really good industry to fall into, and actually make a conscious effort to go into careers in tech. Um, you've been in tech for 8 years, and I'd love to know a bit about what has been your experience working in a male-dominated industry, and have you ever experienced any discrimination, microaggressions, and how did you handle those?
So I think obviously the experience I've had, or the different experiences that I've had over the past 8 years, if I think at any given moment in my career, I've had different experiences. So I think or the few that's really defined kind of where I am today, and, a lot about who I am as a manager as well, is really to do with the beginning of my career. So when I first started out, and, I think if you ask any of my colleagues, I take huge pride in my job. I get a lot of energy out of my day-to-day job. I love working, I try to, in everything that I do, go the extra mile and make a mark for myself, get my name out there. Like to think I'm hardworking, dedicated. And so when I started out initially, straight out of uni, I put a lot of effort into getting my knowledge up to par, being better than the people around me. I basically lived at work, which is pretty sad looking back at it now, but I would definitely say I spent too many hours at work back in the day.
Maybe you could
And
say to your younger self, don't move into work.
exactly. And I obviously put in the hours, and what I realized was that every time I walked into a room, be that with clients or obviously internally, I kept having to prove myself, and having to prove myself more so than my male counterparts at the time. And so I, the more that I realized that, I kind of asked myself, okay, what is it about me that means that I have to prove myself rather than the guy who started literally the same day as me or a few months after me? And so at the beginning, my thought process, because I'm very analytical, so my thought process was, okay, maybe it's my age, right? I'm very junior, I'm young, I'm new in the industry, I look young, so maybe it's my age. But then I very quickly realized, A, people that are the same age as me don't have to prove themselves, and also there's nothing really I can change about my age. I can't suddenly wake up and I'm 45 years old with 20 years experience, even if, every job requirement, I feel like these days you have to have 20 years experience to
Yeah.
even be able to apply. Um, and then so, once I kind of got off the age, I thought about, okay, what, is it my hair color? Is it the way that I dress? What about me is it that is making people question me and not taking me seriously when I walk into the room? And so I started, and like thinking back at this now, it makes me really sad to think that when I first walked through the doors of my first corporate job, I was, a ball of confidence. And then I started chipping away at who I was as a person because I thought that all of these things, such as the way I dress, the heels, getting my nails done, the amount of makeup that I was wearing, I thought all of that was why people weren't taking me seriously. And so I tried so hard to just blend in and not stand out whatsoever. And it took me, honestly, a few years to realize that it wasn't about me. Like the problem wasn't with me, it was actually with the people themselves that were putting me into some box or, seeing me and just putting all of their stereotypes on me. And so, again, like it's so sad thinking back at it now that it took me years to realize this. And then, of course, at the same time, it also took me years to gain my confidence back, and I think that is really the most defining, I guess, multitude of experiences that have, yeah, made me who I am today in the fact that I am really truly believe that as a company, as leaders, as employees, we have to make sure that everyone is able to bring their authentic selves to work. And even further than that, not have to apologize for who you are. Like I shouldn't have to try to blend in. I should be standing out if that's what, what I'm what I'm doing. I shouldn't have to be sorry for wanting to get my nails done. I shouldn't be sorry for wearing cute outfits or having blonde hair. Like my work should speak for itself. And again, I think especially at the beginning of my career was just thought that the problem was with me. And I think that is really, yeah, kind of the the core of my experience working in a male dominated industry where I look at my husband, for example, who's never experienced any of this. He walks into a room and just because he's wearing, a suit and is a man, no one questions that he doesn't know the
Yeah.
subject. So I just,
He's got
yeah,
it. He knows. He
yeah,
knows what he's doing because he's wearing
exactly.
a suit. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard it so often on here, especially ladies. I mean, you mentioned that on in your career, ladies on here have told me when they've stepped into a management role, they've completely stripped everything about themselves, where they're trying to emulate the man that was, before them, and and then eventually years later they realize actually I was hired to be myself and to be authentic and to all of those things about myself that makes me feminine, and that they're all an advantage. And like you said, teams or some people can make you feel like you're at a disadvantage, for instance, because you like getting your nails done, or you might be quite feminine, or because you have blonde hair. It's quite disappointing to hear that companies can make people feel that way, that you have to just strip everything back and think, oh, will people take me seriously now? Yeah, I've heard it quite a few times on here already. It's quite disappointing when you do hear it, and but then eventually people do find their way and they realize I'm just going to be myself, and actually I bring far more to the table when I am my authentic self,
Yeah,
as you refer
a
to it.
100%. And, I would also say that, so I kind of, after having worked through it and, you know, now being a manager and looking after, individual reps, and I naively actually also thought that it was going to go away. That just because it's funny that you say that, women that come into a management position, that's when some of them obviously feel that they have to be more manly in order to do the job. I thought that now being a manager, everyone around me would agree that I have earned my seat at the table and that I've only made it this far because of my results, because of my, dedication to the job and, you know, everything kind of around that. I didn't feel like I had to prove myself anymore. But then, a few months ago, I was invited to quite a senior meeting, and I hadn't come across some of those stereotypes that I had so often early on in my career, and was again reduced to, being kind of just the stereotype of a pretty dumb blonde, even if it was an
Yeah.
offhand comment. And for a millisecond, I was kind of transported back to when I was 22 years old. And I was shocked at the fact that everyone there obviously knew that I had been invited there because I earned it, not because of
Mm.
any, my looks or my gender or whatever it is. And to just constantly be reduced to it, like it adds so much stress and anxiety to our day to day. And, I do believe, sadly, that, even if you're at C-suite level, people are just gonna constantly like put you into whatever box they have to. And so the sad thing is, I actually don't think it's going to go away, but I think, what we have to do as women, as, even as companies, as leaders, is to make sure that we're fostering dialogue about this, because if we're not talking about it, we can't expect other women that are maybe starting out in their career or that are struggling with similar topics. We can't expect them to, know that this is happening to other people, to find their voice, to feel empowered to speak up in difficult situations. And if we're not talking about it, we also can't start the process of educating, whether that is, each other or, men or corporations, about some of these issues that are just dominant in the industries that we work in. So I think it's really important to also, as leaders, create environments where everyone feels empowered to speak up.
Yes, definitely. And where other people can just hear that other people are feeling exactly the same way as you, and it's not just you, and you don't have to internalize that feeling of, was that just me, or was I just a bit sensitive in that? Like, did other people catch up on that? Just to hear that other people are thinking that the same, and feeling the same way as you, can be so helpful for then moving forward and finding a way to obviously try and stop that. And you mentioned there you had a meeting there, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about tricky situations, because you mentioned you just used an example there of a meeting that you were in. Do you have any advice for speaking out in tricky situations? Well, I mean, when you're in it, it's very different, isn't it? Should
It
I say
is.
something or not?
It's really tricky. I think also, I think the first step for anyone to even feel empowered to speak out in tricky situations is that you have to find your voice, right? I think 22-year-old me, I would have just kind of brushed it off and been like, oh, it's just another, sexual comment or just another off the hand comment, nothing serious. You're also trying to be one of the guys, so you're not trying to necessarily cause any tension or, just, yeah, anything like that. So I think the first thing is really that you do have to find your voice. And then I think the really important point once you've found your voice is not to be afraid to use it. I, at the very beginning, was so worried about the reaction that I would cause if I spoke out in those moments. And what I actually found is that when you do speak out, I was surprised at how quickly people kind of backtracked and acknowledged their mistake, because I just assumed naively again that people would, kind of dismiss you or, brush it off. But, every time that I've spoken out about it or I've, put even, potential clients into place about how the comments that they were making. Um, People do realize their mistake if you point it out, and they do apologize for it. And I think this is again such an important piece of trying to make the industry more maybe less male dominated, is is to make sure that people do feel empowered to speak out, because again, a big piece of fixing some of these issues is starts with education. And how are people supposed to know that they're doing something wrong if no one ever tells them? So I think that's kind of what I found. It's just that you shouldn't be afraid of the reaction that you're going to cause by speaking out.
On that note, it's one thing to speak out, but how do you find your voice when you work in a male dominated industry? And because you yourself, you work in a male dominated industry, which is tech. So how do you find your voice? How did you?
So I think probably everyone has their own path to finding their voice. I think the first the kind of the centerpiece, I think, of all of this is again talking about this openly. I was recently speaking to someone who is just started out in her career in tech, very junior. She got a promotion, which, is 150% deserved, because she's absolutely incredible in everything that she does. And similar to me at the beginning, she was telling me about some of the comments people were making to her about why she had gotten the promotion. And I was talking to her about some of the things that I found along the way, which is people who aren't wanting to take accountability or ownership of not putting in the hour it takes to be successful, having to reduce it back to basically finding excuses for why you're more successful than them. And so people almost have to justify their own averageness. And how do they do that? They reduce you to a stereotype. And, again, I don't think this is just a gender discussion. I think this is probably something that minorities in general have to deal with, or that they come across. And it makes me again really sad that she even doubted herself, even if it was just for a millisecond, because of the offhand comments that some of these people were making to her. And so I think, it's really important to talk openly about this, because she didn't realize that I had had similar struggles to her, kind of because I'm a leader now. So I don't know if people just assume you don't have struggles as a leader, or you're supposed to not have them.
They do. I've heard that. They said that once you step into a management role, everybody assumes you know everything, and everything has been, just running smoothly up until that point, and you made it, and that's it.
So, right. So I think like being able to talk about this and seeing others talk about it, women in leadership, different industries to you, maybe different companies, so that you don't feel alone. I think that is, the first step to being able to find your voice. And then I think the second thing is just, having that community, making sure that you're creating environments where if they do speak out, they don't get shut down. Because the worst thing that you could do is have someone speak out in a tricky situation. Maybe it's their first time where they're confronting something like that head on, and they get dismissed, because that's going to be, you're basically going to put them back to zero in that entire process. And it's going to take them probably even longer to ever speak out again. So just making sure that you create safe spaces where everyone, when they do speak out, has an impact, and they feel heard.
Yes, yes. And just finding, some companies have great internal networks, or, it might even be a small group of ladies that work in your area, in your field within your company. Or some people have said to me, just finding external community networks. And then sometimes it can be you can feel slightly more free to talk about things, because they're not people within your company. Things are not going to go anywhere, in case you just want to vent and learn something new. So yeah, definitely finding a network and people that have experienced the same things as you can help so much when moving forward. You do currently work in tech sales, which is obviously, as we mentioned, a man's world. Do you think the industry needs a rebrand though? Because a lot of women, they don't they don't always consider a career in tech. I think all women should consider a career in tech. And would you know, say that women should consider a career in tech sales as well?
Yes, so 100%. Before I answer any of your very loaded questions, I will say though that today, I mean, I think this is really important to point out. The women that I work with today are absolutely phenomenal. And so the standard that I see, whether it's peers, superiors, different teams that I get the chance to work with who are potentially more junior, I mean, the women that we are able to hire into tech are fantastic. And, they put, everyone into their shadows because they're phenomenal. And so I think we do have to just recognize that even if there is not enough of us, the ones that are in tech are just phenomenal. I think that, there's a few reasons or there's a few things that the tech industry has to do in order to become more friendly to attracting, or not more friendly, but yeah, to attract more women. One of the things that is kind of at the forefront of my mind right now. I've just recently got married. If you ask my entire team, they're so sick of hearing me talk about my wedding because it's all I've been doing for 2 months. So I'm just gonna skip through that part. But obviously, a huge thing on my mind is starting a family, and there are structural issues right now at a lot of these tech companies that just don't allow for you to take the break that you need when you do have children. And, again, it's so hypocritical when I hear, senior individuals talk about succession planning and they don't even have, the bare minimum of maternity leave. And, I mean, I can't believe we're in the 21st century where you are making women come back to work after 2, 4, 6 weeks. I mean, it's inhumane to
Yeah.
ask of a woman to come back to work when they're still lactating or if they've had a C-section. I mean, honestly, I think it's disgusting that we're still at this point in time. And until we fix some of those more structural issues, we're never going to be able to attract women or, keep them if they are interested in tech. Because as soon as you start to take the next step in kind of your, I guess, family life, if you do want to take that step, the companies aren't equipped to support you in that. And I don't want to work for a company that doesn't support me in having a child or, having a family, raising a child. So I think that is, one of the kind of topics that are at the forefront of my mind right now that I just think need to change in order to keep women working within the industry as well and to attract
Yeah.
them. And then,
And that happens, you hear that so often with ladies come into the tech industry and sort of 30s, mid 30s, they all leave. And you're absolutely right. One of those things is around that time, ladies want to start a family and they just feel like that company could not retain them. And even if they did take a period of a break, they then struggle to enter the industry again. And they, end up having to go somewhere else. So you're right, it's not just about getting people in, but it's retaining those ladies throughout the whole of their career. And for some ladies, a big part of that is, having a family,
yeah.
leaving temporarily to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like I don't think this would be a topic if men were the ones giving birth. Like, and it's again, like we have to educate people about this. I don't think men really realize the how hard it is on your body to give birth. And, it's not,
Mm.
oh, I want to have 6 months with my baby. It's no, my body isn't ready to come back to work before then. So it's a difference of kind of approaching the subject even and just educating people about, what it means to give birth, what it means if you have not difficulties giving birth, but um I don't know how to say it. My English is going away. Um, but what it means if you have complications whilst giving birth, even, and that's just from like a purely physical aspect. I mean, we're not even talking about, the emotional part of that. So I think it's just, again, like it's important to educate people about this, but until we're able to see those changes within kind of the structural issues that we have right now in the industry, you're not A, going to attract women because they see that there's an expiration date, or B, retain the women that you do have in the industry. And then, I think because you did say, why is it, do I think women should consider a career in tech? I definitely think they should. I think we're at a moment in tech where there's so many developments that are happening. I mean, AI has, increased the speed of development enormously. And so I think there are so many developments and decisions that are going to come as part of those developments that it is crucial for us to be part of that conversations or part of that development. I like to play around with some of the AI tools that are available online, and there's one from OpenAI, which is called DALI, where basically you type in text and then it spits out an image. And I recently put in some jobs in there. So I put nurse, I put doctor, I put firefighter, and guess what gender it's spat out for firefighter? 4 out of 4 times it was a man. For nurse, 3 out of 4 times it was a woman. So, if we're not part of that, then we're never going to fix some of the stereotypes, even, in the most basic discussions. As we are developing some of this technology. And I think it's really crucial for us to be part of that, and have our say in some of the ethical decisions or developments that are going to come out of this technology. So yeah, it's really important for women to consider and to be part of that.
Yes, definitely. Because as you said there, if you work in AI and you're mostly male workforce, and they're putting all of their biases into these technologies, and as you said, they come out the other side, and suddenly all of the pictures of the nurses are women. It's kind of, you just keep getting the same answers over and over again, which is why a lot of tech teams love diversity, because you get different perspectives, different answers. But particularly if we're moving down the route of AI, for instance, as you mentioned, and the opportunity that's available there. Just ensuring that workforces have diverse teams that are creating solutions in AI would be so important. Which is a whole nother podcast in itself. Have you back for that one. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what companies can do to support women in tech. You mentioned a little bit about maternity leave, and helping ladies in that way, and helping them to come back into the industry. What about things like leadership programs and training budgets and those kind of things? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we could probably talk about what companies can do for hours. I think, importantly, it's encouraging forums, whether, like you said, it's internal forums or enabling them to go to external forums. So for example, I'm taking all of the women in my office to the Women in Tech conference in London at the end of September, Reframe, because it's obviously great for them to not only talk about it internally, but also externally network. So I think that is a core piece, is just encouraging forums and allowing um, you to kind of explore forums outside of the four walls that are the company four walls. I think,
Yes.
yeah, leadership programs, really important. I think I'm a big believer of mentoring. So I've been fortunate enough to have had a manager in the past who has just been phenomenal in championing me, kind of showing me the way, is very not shy about her opinions. She definitely speaks up in any situation that's difficult. And so she's kind of modeled that behavior for me. And it is so important for me to kind of pay that back to some of the more junior reps that are coming up the ranks now. And so I think that's where, things such as leadership programs are really important, because unless you see it for yourself, if you're working in an office where there maybe isn't a female director or manager, you're not going to be exposed to that. And so I
Yeah.
think leadership programs, forums are really crucial.
Yes, I love the fact that you mentioned bringing other people up the ranks as well, and just remembering to not pull the ladder up behind you. Um, do you have any mentors or people who champion you either now, or that you can remember, throughout your career?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in mentors. I think you definitely, whenever you find someone that you would like to have as your mentor, you should definitely not be shy to ask that person to be your mentor. I definitely have missed opportunities because I didn't feel like I could ask people to be my mentors. So I'm now just really taking initiative and being proactive about asking people to be my mentor. So I have a couple. One who, yeah, was kind of the manager of my manager a few years back, and he actually has been incredible because he's never reduced me to anything that I've been reduced to my entire life working in tech sales, but instead has always seen my accomplishments and also helped me as part of that um, to realize that it's, I can bring my authentic self to work, not having to apologize it and just be recognized for my results. So he's been a huge mentor and champion of mine. And then, as I said, my a manager that I've had in the past, she's definitely the person that I aspire to be. I hope to work with her for a very long time because she's just absolutely incredible and she has championed me wherever she can. And I think that's a really important point is for you or for myself as a woman to champion other women as well. I think sometimes we don't do it enough and we kind of forget what it was like when we were first coming up the ranks. And so I'm a big believer of also champion others and just pulling people up and making sure that you're, as you said, you're not pulling up the ladder behind you, but you're extending that and just driving that forward.
Yeah, and from those mentors or anybody else in the industry, can you think of the best piece of advice that you've been given when it comes to your career?
I think that's a really hard question.
I find that advice that you were given when you were younger, it doesn't always apply until you start working your way through your career. And I found that recently where I thought of things and I thought, actually, years ago, somebody told me that, and I just didn't take it in at the time. But I think as you work through, sometimes that advice suddenly starts to sink in, and you think, oh, yes.
Yeah, I think
Is there
advice,
anything?
I think honestly, I don't think there's a single piece of advice. I think that's also something that I tell some of the reps in my team is, there's no single thing that you do day in, day out that's gonna make sure you're successful. I think what I've always kind of tried to mold myself after or work towards, which is something that, as you said, someone very early on in my career told me, is I just thrive to be better today than I was yesterday. And, that can be with how you approach work, with, how efficient you are in your day to day, or whatever it might be. But just even for yourself to know that you're better today than you were a month ago, a year ago, I think that just ensures that you're constantly improving rather than trying to take big steps at a time. So I think that one is probably the one that I would say has been the one that's stuck out over the years.
Yes, yes. And as you say, something that you were told years ago and suddenly you think, oh yeah, I get it now because you're living it and you think, oh, I get it. Sometimes when you get told that advice, especially if it's from somebody very senior, and you're sort of thinking, well, I'm never going to get to where you are, and that doesn't apply to me just yet. And years down the line, it suddenly sinks in. Um, on that note, what would you say, or do you have any advice for women who are just entering the industry? Something you wish someone had told you?
I would say honestly, just be unapologetic. Like, just don't apologize. Don't feel like you have to apologize. Just, be your authentic self, be it to your fullest extent, because that's the only way that, you can really, I would say, like for myself, if I'm not bringing my authentic self to work, then I'm not actually being as successful in my day-to-day job as I would be if I don't know, whatever it might be. I'll let you cut that out. But I would definitely say, yeah, just go into it, be your authentic self, be unapologetic, and don't be afraid to, as I said, speak out. Like just, you're really, I think people would be surprised by the reactions that you would get when you do speak out. So just do it and yeah, don't apologize for who you are ever.
Yes, because we're almost conditioned not to speak out, and that's the thing. And as you said, you would be pleasantly surprised that most people, as soon as you hold the mirror up to them and say, you know what, you made me feel this way, most people would just think, oh gosh, I can't believe I made somebody feel that way. There are those people out there that are deliberately trying to make people feel that way, but 9 times out of 10, most people just don't realize until you actually say something. So that's great advice. We are almost out of time, and I wanted to ask you, do you have any final words of wisdom for thriving in a male-dominated industry?
I think, you know, I think my final words of wisdom is work together. You're never alone, and whatever you're going through, you're never alone. So work together with, whether that's colleagues, your managers, your mentors, your champion, whoever it is, with the community that you're part of. There's great communities out there for you to join. I'm part of them. I've felt more empowered since joining them, just to speak out as well. So, definitely work together. I think importantly, educate the people around you as much as you can, because we can't figure out solutions to anything unless we're educating everyone around us. And yeah, I would just say, I mean, from my own personal experience, I've always felt like I've had to do double the amount of work versus my male counterparts. Not necessarily the most healthiest of advice, but let your success do the talking for you, and don't ever feel like you're reduced to anything other than whatever. I don't
You can cut that bit. Um,
know.
But thank you. That is lovely advice to end it on. I love the fact that you mentioned joining communities. There is the She Can Co community, but you mentioned Reframe. We are actually at Reframe as well. We are a partner of Reframe. So we will see you there. And you're absolutely right. Just having those communities for support to reach out to can make a world of difference. So Sophie, we're already out of time. I could continue talking to you all afternoon, but thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kaylee. And yeah, I hope to speak to you again sometime soon.
Yes, yes, sounds good. And to everybody listening, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.